Number 1. The murderer known as Jack the Ripper terrorized the Whitechapel area of London back in 1888, killing at least 5 women and leaving their bodies mutilated in a way that indicated he was more than just familiar with human anatomy. Could he have been a surgeon? A mortician? No one knows because he was never caught. It is unlikely his identity will ever be known. It ranks as one of the world's most infamous unsolved mysteries. Number 2. 22-year-old Elizabeth Short was found murdered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles on January 15, 1947. She became known as Black Dahlia because of her dark hair and perhaps a passing reference to a movie, The Blue Dahlia, which had come out the year before. Notwithstanding a lengthy investigation and a roster of more than 150 suspects, her killer was never found. It is unlikely the case will ever be solved. Number 3. A more recent unsolved mystery originated in Los Angeles is who murdered Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. In June 1994, the 34-year-old ex-wife of American football star O.J. Simpson and the 26-year-old Goldman were found stabbed to death outside of Nicole's home. O.J. was the defendant in the murder trial, but he wasn't convicted, although he was found liable for the murders in a civil lawsuit. Since civil lawsuits don't require proof beyond a reasonable doubt, it's impossible to say whether OJ was the killer, although he does love to talk about how it would have gone down had he had done it. Number 4. 22-year-old Betty Shanks was found dead in Brisbane, Australia in 1952, and the case remains one of the oldest and most notorious unsolved murder cases in Queensland, Australia. Australian history Lyle Reed had been researching the crime for many years and believes he knows what happened. A policeman accidentally killed her with his motorcycle and then staged a cover-up. However, his book about the events remains unpublished, and law enforcement has seemingly swept Reed's theory under the rug. Number 5. The night of September 14th, 1954, 21-year-old Jean Marie Townsend left a party and was found the next morning in South Ruislip, England, strangled by her own scarf. Rumor abundant that an American soldier was responsible, but the police never identified a single suspect. The case was reopened again in 1982 following several anonymous tips, but the case went cold again and remains unsolved. Number 6. 15-year-old Barbara and her 12-year-old sister Patricia disappeared into thin air after seeing the film Love Me Tender in Chicago on December 28, 1954. What followed was one of the most labor-intensive missing person cases in Chicago history. A month later, their bodies were discovered lying naked by the side of a local road, although the coroner claimed the girls seemingly died from exposure within 4 hours after their disappearance. His report was widely criticized and takes partial blame for their case having gone hopelessly cold. Number 7. On October 22, 1966, Robert and Helen Sims and their daughter Joy were found dead in their Tallahassee, Florida home by the Sims' older daughter, Jenny, when she had returned from a babysitting job. A massive search was launched to find whoever committed the crime, but the Sims had no enemies. There was no discernible motive to the crime, and although there were suspects, no one was ever charged. It's hoped that the long-stored away crime scene evidence will someday provide a lead as new technology develops. Number 8. In 1966, 2 electronics repairmen were discovered dead in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, dressed in suits and wearing lead eye masks, the kind that might be worn to protect from radiation. Beside them was a notebook that included instructions to be agreed place, swallowed capsules, and wait for mass signals. Whether the men swallowed the supposed capsules or what the capsules were supposed to have contained will never be known because the toxicology report was inconclusive and probably botched. And despite the physical evidence, or perhaps because of the strangeness, no one has ever been able to figure out what really happened. Number 9. During the 1960s and 1970s, a person who identified as the Zodiac murdered at least 5 people in the San Francisco area. It went on to taunt law enforcement with cryptic communications containing a secret code that to this day has never been cracked. Over the years, suspects came forward, and some still do, but none have ever been charged as the actual Zodiac. Number 10. On November 24, 1971, Northwest Airlines Flight 305 was hijacked by a neatly dressed man in his mid-40s. Shortly after takeoff, the man handed a note to the flight attendant demanding $200,000, worth $1 million today, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane on arrival. His name on the passenger manifest was Dan Cooper, although you probably know him as DB Cooper, which is how the media referred to him. Cooper demands were met, and the man was never seen again, and his identity will most likely never be discovered. Number 11. Bob Crane was the actor best known for his title role on the 1960 television show Hogan's Heroes. In 1978, Crane was found beaten and strangled with an electrical cord in Scottsdale, Arizona. The investigation opened up Crane's rather complicated personal life to the public. He had hundreds of romantic partners both before and during his marriage, but the lead suspect was a male friend of Crane's. In any event, the friend was acquitted of the murder due to the lack of hard evidence and exonerated yet again through DNA testing. The case will probably never be solved. Number 12. In 1982, 7 people died in Chicago after taking extra-strength Tylenol in the capsule form. It was soon discovered the capsules had been laced with cyanide. Since the pills had all come from different factories, it becomes clear that the tampering had occurred locally in the stores where the pills were sold. Over the years, there had been several leads, but none panned out. The FBI even requested DNA samples from the Unabomber who had terrorized the same area just a couple of years earlier, but the case remains unsolved. Tylenol and other over-the-counter pain relievers are much harder to open as a result. Number 13. In 1990, 13 important works of art were stolen right out from Boston's Gardner Museum. Notwithstanding extensive investigation by local authorities and the FBI, the artworks have never been recovered, nor has anyone ever been charged with a crime. Currently, the museum is offering a $10 million reward for information leading to the recovery of the stolen works. The Gardner Museum heist is one of the most extensive theft crimes in history. Number 14. Natalee Holloway went missing following a night of partying with friends and several locals. During a high school trip to Aruba in 2005, her body was never discovered. And although one of the locals, Joran Vander Sloot, became the prime suspect and taunted authorities and Holloway's family with false confessions of having sold Holloway into slavery and false leads on where her body can be found, has never been charged. He currently is in prison for another murder back in 2010 involving another young woman. Number 15. Former Russian federal security officer Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned in 2006 by radioactive plutonium-210. He died several days later, and no one has ever been able to discern who is responsible. And considering that he was a political enemy of Russia's President Vladimir Putin, maybe it's best not to dig too deeply. Okay guys, that was 15 mysteries that have never been solved and most likely will never be solved. If you guys enjoyed the video, I'd be in your greatest gratitude if you can hit that like and subscribe button, alright? And drop me a comment down below if there's anything else you'd like to see. Have a great day.